So I think we're live, everybody. In that case, hello, lords and ladies of the internet. I'm the King of Candor, and welcome back to the podcast today. Today we're going to be talking about the fallout of Amazon's Fallout show, and I've got a fun panel of guests with me. On my left here is Pops returning to the show. So I think we're live, everybody. In that case,
hey, baby.
Hello, lords and ladies
What's
of the internet.
going on?
I'm the
Yeah,
King of Candor,
you need me to say a little
welcome back
something?
to the podcast today. Answer as little as you'd like.
All right, yeah. So, obviously, to introduce myself, I go by Pops. Anyone who's been a loyal listener probably already knows. And, I don't have a YouTube channel or anything like that myself, but I'm generally pretty welcome on these streams because I'm the only person besides our host here who does literally any research on our topics a lot of the time. We're coming at it from a different perspective, at least I am today, because I actually have never played the Fallout games. I'm not too familiar with the game universe, the lore. I really just know the memes, so I'm going to be looking at this pretty much purely as a show, which obviously was approved by our host here as, maybe a helpful perspective, so I'll just try to contribute the best I can.
Excellent. And then he was on an earlier episode, but returning to this show today is our friend Tio here on the right.
Hello, yes, I am just another resident media enjoyer. I like to look at things from sometimes a bit of a technical perspective. I am studying engineering, but as far as my experience with the Fallout franchise goes, I was introduced to it through just it being a Bethesda media. I found Bethesda through Skyrim. I played 3, New Vegas, 4. I recently tried 76. That was an experience. But overall, it's just a really fun world that I enjoy, and so it was fun to see a new take on it through a different media format.
And then last but not least, it is our resident author and father, Mr. Pag. Would you like to tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Hiya. I'm a writer. I've got a trilogy out there that you can go and look up if you want. It's the only thing I've written so far, but by the end of the month, I'm going to be putting out something new. And I love Fallout. I've read I've played all the Fallout games. So watching this show, I kind of came into it expecting that I would hate it. I kind of expected that it would be really terrible, that they would just completely shit on Fallout. But they didn't. I was very, very pleased with that. So that's my general take on this thing.
All right. Yeah, I was watching some reviews earlier today, and a lot of the people that said, this is bad, I don't like it, a lot of their issues were based on the fact that it seemed to kind of veer off from the world building in the games. You got any thoughts on that?
I don't agree at all, really. I don't see how they really undid any of the world building in the game. It seemed pretty straightforward. It's just moving forward with the world building. Kid, do you what level of spoils are we on here?
So for the first little bit here, before we get into it, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping and a little bit of non-spoiler review for people who haven't seen it yet.
Okay,
I do want to say that if you haven't seen it, it is worth watching. Even if I don't think it's a perfect show, I'm going to rate it about a 6.5 out of 10. I'm between 6 and 7. Hopefully today I'll solidify it. But I think it's definitely worth watching. This is one of the better video game properties to come out lately, and it is very clear that the problems with the show are not from a lack of love for the property.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So, would anybody else like to give a rough ranking on the show?
I would say a 7 or an 8 for me. I fucking love this show.
I would agree.
Probably a 6, around the range of a 6, between 6, 6.5. I would say. Spoiler free, my thoughts just on the quality. I would say it started off strong and then kind of dropped off a bit for me, and then there's a few elements that just seemed ridiculous. So it's good, not perfect like you said, but still enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely not perfect. There are some definite issues, as much as I like it. And I might be rating it high because, I love Fallout. So seeing it on screen, I was just like, oh man, soy face.
The member berries.
Yeah, exactly. Member berries. I remember that. So yeah, that totally might be tainting my my view of the show. But also just the fact that we have a show that you can do that with, instead of just, again, shitting on the source material is, I don't know, something to be said about that.
And
Will we be having many Halo comparisons tonight?
well, I think
We
the
may.
easy one is
Yeah.
just the Halo comparison is very obvious because man, that
Mhm.
show really, really hates its source material. Is Teal
Yeah.
quite loud? I can lower him a little bit.
Oh, apologies.
That's on my end. I boosted you.
I'll never forgive you.
You're a lovely quiet boy, so sometimes I have to boost you. All right. So
Tio,
yeah,
do you have a rank?
No, go ahead, guys.
Tio, do you have like a numerical ranking or anything?
I would concur with Peg. I would say 7. Yeah, between 7 and 7.5. I enjoyed a lot of it. It definitely pleased the nerd in me. There were some elements that infuriated me. I think they might have infuriated me on purpose, though. I'm hoping I think they were going for something. They probably achieved that something. I just do not like that something. um Otherwise, I really enjoyed a lot of it. They did a very good job tying things together in general. There are a couple standout issues, but I feel like overall they did a very technically great job.
Yeah, the show looked great for sure.
Oh, the aesthetics
Oh,
are
yeah.
on point. I do think actually we might have another person join us.
Oh my god.
Let me get
Oh my
him in here.
god. Who's coming? Oh my god. I'm so excited. Oh my god. Oh my god.
Right. So we've been told the audio is good. Those of you who didn't catch it, last week we had some major audio issues, and I had to take that episode down. It is still available on the channel. It is just currently unlisted. So in order to get access to it, you just go to either my server, and I have a permanent link set up in the announcements, or on my channel, I did a post about it, so you can find it there. I didn't feel right taking it down because there's a lot of good content there, but man, it is just the audio issues aren't good enough that I want to keep it as a mainstream thing for people to go find it.
Yeah, it's a shame too. I really enjoyed that one.
All right, and here's our final guest. This is how do you want to go by on the live stream today, sir? Titan, okay? Or do you want a different name?
Titan works, yeah.
All right, so this is Titan. Titan's been part of the server for a little bit, and he really started connecting with us on the show. He really wanted to talk about it, and I wanted to have him on here to bring another perspective. And Titan, how would you feel your relationship with Fallout as a franchise is, and how do you think about this show in a numerical ranking?
I think the relationship, I'm kind of in a similar position between both Pops and Pag, where I have never actually played any of the games physically, but on many occasions, my relationship would first start with alternate history hubs like Timeline of Fallout, and then from there, I have on many occasions fallen down the rabbit hole of like in-depth Fallout discussions, and then like Kretosis and stuff like that.
Okay, I can dig that. I think it's interesting to have somebody who cares about the background lore but has never actually played in the games. That's a fun spot to be in.
Yes, it is. I think for numerical ranking, I feel like the 6 is where I'll probably be sitting at for most of this stuff. It's like, yeah, and spoiler-free stuff. It's like the show looks already amazing. Well, I think the best compliment is like the director himself said he wanted at least 90% of the effects to try and at least be practical, and I think it really shows just how it looks.
The way the characters interact with things is very good in this show. It feels like the best version of even when they have to use special effects of using them, and I think that's something that should be commended. Now, before we go any further, I do need to do this, Mr. Titan. I have to lower you a little bit. Chat saying you're a little bit loud here, but that's okay. That's what we do it live for. But just all right. So before we fully get into Fallout, I do want to say a couple things. First, I know that in the media review community, which I'm not really a part of, there's been a kerfuffle because of a channel called Hello Future Me, who's part of the world building community, which I am a part of. The quick version is he made a video talking about how terrible the Rings of Power TV show is, which it is awful. If my channel was around back then, I would have been one of the people covering how bad it is. But he made a video explaining how bad it is. Then he decided to take the last probably half hour-ish, from what I can see, and attack a bunch of creators like Little Platoon, like Critical Drinker, like Nerdrotic. Obviously, these guys are much bigger than me. They don't need me coming to their defense. I do want to say, though, that I think it's incredibly crappy of him to do that, to just sneak that in at the end of his video. And I think that if you want to criticize other creators, go for it. Make that its own video. And the only reason I'm bringing it up here is I want it to be known that as somebody who's part of the world-building community, I don't like that, and I don't want that drama and real-world politics being brought in here. I don't care if you don't like someone like Ben Shapiro or Steven Crowder. Have those opinions, that's fine. Put it over there. If they make some criticism about a piece of media, address it from the criticism perspective. Leave their political crap out of it. Even if they're completely wrong about, politics, they might be correct about this critical lie. It happens sometimes, go with it as is. Don't get so hung up on the whole, they believe in this thing that I don't believe in. Put it to the side. That annoying bit of thing aside, the other piece of annoying political thing I want to talk about is the way that the board game Munchkin has been treating their creator. I'm not super familiar with a lot of the backstory here, but I recently watched one of the creators' videos, and Munchkin is celebrating its, I think, 15th year anniversary. There's some anniversary they're celebrating. And they cut out
one
of
the
the
game
guys.
Munchkin?
Yes, the game Munchkin. And they made it during the celebration. They've recently started making apologies for some of the way they portrayed some of the art in the earlier editions, how it's a bit sexualized and how it's over the top, a little bit crude and gory. And they cut the creator out. And that was years ago they had a problem with him. And now they're doing an anniversary celebration, and they haven't invited him back. They haven't acknowledged him. I think it's really crappy. I understand Jackson Games is allowed to do it. They own the game, and they could do what they want with the IP. But to me, it's really, really garbage to take a creator who's still alive and throw him to the side because you disagree with his politics. If his politics are so objectionable, put him on the stage, let him say them, so you can then point to them and say, look at how stupid this man's politics are. So it's just frustrating. I'm sorry.
What even are the creators? What even are the creators' politics? I didn't realize that he had a political bent. I never saw that in the Munchkin games.
He is.
What could he be injected there?
He's a very I'd say center left, but very anti-authoritarian radical. He doesn't like anybody telling him what to do, no matter what. He's less of a lulbert than Styx Hexenhammer. But he's very much in that. Yeah, I don't remember things being sexualized, and I don't remember it being over the top either. But apparently the creators, because he says stuff like, I don't want politics in my media, and he completely wanted to go off on tangents about how he doesn't like the way that Hollywood portrays certain races and groups of people, they cut him from him. Because he had the wrong opinion on race, they did it. Which is stupid as heck. I don't know why that was even, a concern for them. But I found that when I watched the video earlier about it, and I really wanted to bring it up because as somebody who's making their own RPG, I find it really crappy that he could be cut out and shunned from it like that. That's just not right.
Well, I mean, it just kind of goes to show, don't sell the rights to your game ever.
I was about
no matter
to
what.
say, yeah, that's how that happens, man.
Yeah.
But
ideally. Yeah, if I were to ever, I don't know. I know we're both making games, but it's just if I were to ever put out a game and get real successful, I'd really want to kind of create some sort of network between creators to help people get things published and cross promote and whatnot.
I'm saying, and I find it really crappy that they just would cut him out and throw him to the side. He's got a smaller, bigger than me, of course, but small YouTube channel. And I find it really lame that I only found out through his YouTube channel because somebody asked him on his channel, hey, why aren't you talking about this? Why haven't you been invited here? They invited everybody else back who was one of the people who worked on it. He said, hey man, they don't like my politics. We got in a big fight. And also with what's going on in Battletech right now, with that massive civil war in that community over politics and different identities and things like that, that's another problem. I just see it infecting the bastions of our RPG community here, and I don't want that. I would much rather politics be kept in the political realm. it frustrates me to no end that people don't seem to realize you can work with people that you disagree politically on. I can tell you right now, I don't think anybody on this panel here can agree with me politically. Probably Pops and Pag are the closest to me, but even then we have disagreements. It's okay. You don't need to love somebody to work with them. But it's very frustrating that we have this purity spiral. And I just wanted to get out of the way because I've seen it cropping up the last week or two, an incredible amount, and it felt like something I wanted to address before we jumped into Fallout, which is a good poster child because the purity spiraling around the show is stupid. It's incredibly dumb how people are just trying to make the show out to be what it's not in the weirdest ways. Did Munchkin do an extra credits? Blowfish, this was years ago. Apparently this happened, like in 2014 or something, which is just, I didn't even know about this. I didn't even know Munchkin was that old, but think about it is.
You know what, though? At the end of the day, still, I do say, respect. Good for him for, sticking to his beliefs.
Yeah, and he said that he doesn't hate them for doing it, which, bigger man than me, I'd be very upset if I got kicked out like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My own damn game. I'd be salty as fuck.
Very salty.
Mm.
And the only other thing is, those of you who are just joining us, make sure you join the server. It should be linked below. And if not, post a comment and I'll have somebody post the link here. Join the Discord. We have book club coming up in a few weeks. We're finishing a King Arthur book. And we do several movie night events. In fact, we had people arrange live showings of the Fallout show there. Different ways you can come hang out with people and meet up to show it off. So you would have been able to catch up to it. So now let's start with some spoiler-free things from Fallout. I want to start with this show does not hate New Vegas. Anybody who says it hates New Vegas is an idiot. I would say the show likes New Vegas too
The whole
much.
time.
Well, yeah, there was a lot of member berries for New Vegas. I did member them. I did enjoy it.
Not just member berries. I'd say it's like actively adores it.
Yes. Mm-hmm. To the point where there are no Nuka-Cola trucks that I saw in the show. There's probably some in the background. But I remember at least 7 Sunset Sarsaparilla things. Remember, that didn't exist in Fallout 1 and 2. That was solely created for New Vegas because they wanted to expand the soda IP idea. You kidding me?
Something we learn in Fallout 4 is that Nuka-Cola made a competitor to Sunset Sarsaparilla, Nuka-Cola Wild. Specifically, we don't see that in the show. We see Sunset Sarsaparilla. If the show hated New Vegas, they would have used the competitor.
Yeah, the competitor created by Todd's game that came after it that's supposed to be better than that. There's also an interview, a great interview, I might add, that IGN did with Todd Howard and I forget which Nolan brother it was, but the director of the whole series. They go on, they talk about the show, how they feel about it, how they feel about fan reaction. This is the first interview that I've seen that is post-launch of the show. All the other interviews are pre-launch, so they didn't get to see how fans felt about it. And Todd specifically says how New Vegas is canon. He said New Vegas is super canon because it's one of the main games. He mentioned, he said the way that the game's canons work is the original Fallout games, Fallout 3, Fallout 4, New Vegas, are considered the prime canon. The other Fallout spin-off games, and he didn't say Brotherhood of Steel or Tactics, he said like Fallout Shelter, are less canon. Those are the games where the canonicity is down a little bit because Fallout Shelter, you don't really want it to be canon because it's kind of just a goofy, fun mobile game. But that puts it in this category where you're thinking about it like, hey, it would be here. This is where the canonicity of it is. And I think it's a good spot for him to say it.
Is that a word, canonicity?
It technically is an internet slang because it's one of those...
I just learned this today.
Yeah, it's one of those words that gets invented because you need a way to talk about what is canon and what is not canon. And the word canon used to exclusively be used for religious canons or religious texts. So by applying it to media, which is a more new age form, you get this. Yes, Artemis, the concept of A canon, B canon, C canon, exactly. And I think Star Wars is the best example of this with the EU. The A canon, which is the prime stuff, is the movies. The secondary canon was all the books and games, and the canon past that are things that are specifically labeled as non-canon or noted like Splinter of the Mind's Eye, I believe, which completely goes against canon, but might have a couple details that were canon. It's a very good way to go about it, and Todd talked about that. He said everything that's obviously canon is canon. It's just the things that are very obviously not canon, like Fallout Shelter. this is important because if you go to a lot of lore YouTubers, they will pull on Fallout Shelter for a lot of really in-depth stuff. A great channel does this is the Epic Nate. He's got some fantastic, real deep dives into Fallout lore to the point where he's actually gone out and bought the Fallout role-playing game and will read through the adventure paths solely to discover the lore there. The combination of that plus the Fallout shows, not shows because the Fallout books and the Fallout, looks like a tabletop game that uses them. It's really interesting seeing how these touch on canon. And Todd said those are secondary canon, which I think is interesting.
How much could possibly be in Fallout Shelter? That's the mobile game, right?
Yes.
How much could possibly be in there? What?
There's some.
There's
I've
an
played
incredible
that too.
amount.
You gotta be shitting me, bro.
Nope.
What?
The name of the mysterious strangers in Fallout Shelter. What's the guy from Fallout 4, Tio? With the head thing?
The head thing?
The
like the Zeta guy?
yes.
Oh shoot! Lorenz.
Yes. The Lorenz family and their whole storyline is really expanded upon there. One of his assistants is a person you can get who also has one of those things on who's looking for Lorenzo. And the whole Cabot House stuff is expanded upon there. There's all these things about Yog-Sothoth. You can get cultists for Cthulhu and demons in there. And these are actual demons in there. You can get Mothman cultists. And they just say random lines. In fact, if you have a Mothman cultist and a Yog-Sothoth cultist in the same room, they will start to lose happiness because they don't like each other because Mothman is fighting against them, which is canon from Fallout 76. It is insane. It is one of those things where like only crazy people play this, and I think it's fascinating to look at. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's all I really have to say. Like, oh, yeah, well, all
Yeah.
right.
Like, I don't know how else to go with it. We know
The
Nick
weirdest
Valentine
fucking
accidentally killed a woman because if you get Nick Valentine in there and pair him up with a woman, he will mention about how the last time he paired up with the lady, he didn't fight hard enough and she got shot, so he's going to make sure that she doesn't get hurt this time. It's fascinating that there's so much really, really deep lore. Yeah.
Oh,
Just-
God.
It's not as bad as because right now there's a Elder Scrolls game like that too, but it's only being tested in China because they hate us here for some reason. And people who've gotten into the Chinese one have had it translated into English. It's got some crazy lore implications. Like you can get Tiber Septim as one of the people you can recruit for your basically your castle. And if he's doing a quest, he'll mention how he used to be 3 people, but now he's 1. And if you have the other versions of him, they will argue back and forth allegedly about like who's the real one. And it's just fascinating. Like this is just a spin-off mobile game spin-off. But yeah.
That is deranged.
Oh, it's great. The most important pieces of Elder Scrolls lore are actually for the Elder Scrolls card game. You know, that thing that everybody forgot about? It has told us more about 4 of the different Daedric deities than we've ever gotten. Like Sithis, well, you could tell that he's basically an inverted evil version of Jesus Christ now, and Lorkhan's supposed to be God. That's the whole way it was set up. It was hinted at that the Dark Brotherhood were an inversion of Catholicism, but because of the card game, the way it talks about them, the way it shows Ysgramor fist-fighting giants, so we know that the giants of Atmora are 200 feet tall. We also know that the giants used to be 200 feet tall, but they degraded down because they had to shrink because in order to hide from the humans who just kept killing them all the time. It's insane, all the lore that just gets dumped there. Like, all those people who say, oh, we used to have crazy fun lore, like, back when Cyrodiil was a jungle. No. That's all still there. They just put it in the card game and the mobile games. It's insanity.
And those are all Bethesda, right?
Yep, all Bethesda.
I think the only thing that's technically not Bethesda is ESO, but that's ZeniMax Online, which is a weird sister company.
Yeah, because Bethesda is owned by ZeniMax, which is owned by Bethesda, which is owned by ZeniMax.
Yeah.
Yeah, Not All Farius is right. Most of the lore from the Great War, that's in the Elder Scroll. So if you remember how the Thalmor fought against the Empire and had that huge genocide and everybody died and the Empire lost, so that's why they had to ban Talos. All of that lore, which is just touched on in the game, the entire card game has entire like trees about it. There are cards exclusively about the war arc, and you get to actually play in that war as you play the campaign of the card game. It's just crazy shit. I'm telling you, man. So when people try to tell me things like the Fallout show is not canon, they're completely wrong. It is very much so going to be canon. Todd is very much in the idea of if I'm going to release a product, it needs to fit canonicity to the best of our ability. And that's why I think when people just try to write this off as a non-canon thing or assume they don't care, they're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any more thoughts on the show? I want to pull it back to Fallout real quick that you guys want to talk about before we go into some more spoiler-related discussions.
Maybe just to set the scene. I mean, like Titan said, he's into the timelines. I believe this one takes place after the events of all the games.
Yes, sir.
Right?
This is the latest piece of Fallout lore that we've gotten so far.
Okay.
This takes place in, I believe it was 2296.
Yeah.
Something around there, because it's like 218 years after the Resource War ended, so around that time, I think.
And it's
Yeah.
crazy
Fallout
because
4. I was just going to try to pull up the timeline a little more. I think Fallout 4 was it 2080 something? I mean, 2280 something?
Yeah, 81, I think.
All right. And then New Vegas was 77.
Yeah.
I
All right.
don't quite remember Fallout 3, but that was just a couple years before.
Yeah, Fallout 3 was before New Vegas.
Yeah.
But also, who cares about Fallout 3?
it's funny because Fallout 3 got some super interesting canon implications because of what we find out in the show, but I don't want to get into the big spoilers about that yet. Filling out other non-spoiler things
talk
with the
about-
show. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if we wanted to flesh out the timeline, we could say where the different factions and things stand before the show and how that evolves over the course of the show.
I want to get into that as we
Like,
get into
the
the show
Brotherhood.
itself a little bit because it's very
Okay.
confusing if you try to set up for people who've not seen the show or who've not seen the games where these factions are and what they've evolved into. Because the Brotherhood especially has been 20 different factions throughout the games. People think this is inconsistencies, but the Brotherhood has also been shown across, I think it's 175 years. I think they're going to change a little bit factionally across that time.
Also, there are multiple different like sub factions of the same group.
Yeah.
So
Very
Right.
rarely.
Isn't there a part, I believe one of the faction guys talks about how they got orders from some other authority somewhere else, like over to the east?
That is the
Yeah.
Brotherhood specifically, and this is the first time ever we've had confirmation that Brotherhood factions are talking to each other. Usually, the factions are just independent, and like we'll send an email back and forth occasionally to be like, "You guys committing sins yet? No, we good, fam. Okay, keep it up." That's the extent of their contact.
all is well.
Yeah, all is well. Don't worry, we haven't committed cannibalism. Didn't ask about cannibalism. Don't worry, we didn't do it though.
Hey, just checking in.
Just making sure, because oh boy, these wastelanders love their cannibalism. But
There's this weird courier with a perk, and he just keeps eating everyone.
he just loves it. He just loves man jerky. So a few other things before we get into spoilers with the show. The character work is rather well done. Most of the characters either have good arcs that they go on, or you can see how they've progressed throughout the years of what the show's set up. I think that a lot of the actors, even the side actors, are really good. There's 2 or 3 that I think could have been a little bit better, but considering what we were given with it, I think it's great. I also think that the shows, like we mentioned earlier, the aesthetics are on point. It gets a lot of the feel down very well. Fallout always has had a more goofy tone than people seem to remember for some reason. So the show really captures that. Sometimes to the detriment of itself, of course. I'm not going to say it's a perfect melding of humor and like reality, but sometimes it gets too much flack for some of the goofier moments.
Yeah, I mean,
will say
Fallout.
I absolutely approve of pretty much all the visual humor that we get. Yeah.
Quite fun. And man,
I
there's
don't want to
some
spoil
banger jokes.
it.
Oh, there's some banger jokes we'll get to. You would say something as well, Pag?
Yeah, Fallout's always been kind of a humorous setting. And I think they did pretty well with like mating the like horror and the humor just like really close together. When we get into it with the Gulper, I think that's kind of the best like capture of that.
I agree completely. I think that episode 6 is my least favorite episode, but that episode also has some of the most horrific stuff into it. So before we get started, the only other things that I will say is if you've never played a Fallout game before or never dealt with Fallout media, this show is pretty good with its onboarding. There's a lot of little things that you might need to just understand or have somebody explain to you later on. But for the most part, when they introduce a faction or explain something, that first 30 seconds to a minute, they've explained what these guys are to the point where you can move on with the story. There are deeper implications, of course. Like when they mention NCR in the show, you kind of don't need to know who they are immediately. They just know that, NCR was a powerful thing here in South California. That's it. Obviously, us as players know way more about NCR, and that's something we want to look into and know more. The context is very much there for if you want more details. But as a casual viewer, if you don't know who NCR is, and you just get told, they're the new California Republic, they exist in California, okay, that's all you need to know. And same with a lot of the minor factions. The only one that really get a focus on is the Brotherhood. And again, the way they portray the Brotherhood, you know within 10 minutes what's going on with these guys, what their MO is, and how they're going to function. So if you're worried, like I've never watched a Fallout thing, or I don't know anything about Fallout at all, like Pops can attest to, you can get into the show. It's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the way that they introduce and characterize, what factions that we do have, and a little bit of the history that they talk about in the show, they do a good job. And the tone of it, you understand it within a few minutes. It's really only the little Easter eggs that you might miss. And even then, that's not that big of a deal for me. That's something for the game fans, the people that know the lore. So I thought they did a good job.
There's absolutely Easter eggs for the major fans of the show. That if you don't know them, they just come across as little bits of, this is fun details to make the scene appear more cohesive. But if you know the lore, there's a lot of Easter eggs that are very rewarding, or simply that can serve as member berries, so to speak. But they aren't required to enjoy the show.
Any thoughts, Titan?
Not at all.
I would just say, I think the show, one of the things that it's very well done of it can tell you what you need to know without having knowing the games. 'Cause I think you mentioned, we'll see later on, kind of the ghoul's medication almost. I think you mentioned it's specifically referencing something in the games, but even then, you can get the idea of what exactly it is before you've even touched one of the games.
I think that's a kudos to the show. There's a lot of times when you're watching a piece of media that is made in a franchise that you know nothing about, that the franchise either has to be completely ignored, or it's so obtuse that it holds itself down. Almost all of the modern Disney Star Wars is like that. If you've missed any piece of Star Wars content for the past 6 years, then you're not going to know who the heck anybody that shows up in these shows are. You'll just be watching, any episode of Ahsoka or Boba Fett, and all of a sudden you'll be like, and Scrungo Bungo is here. And there's a moment where you clearly expect the audience to gasp and clap, and you just turn to your nerdy friend and be like, who's Scrungo Bungo? And it gets to the point where I'm like, Dad, I don't know who these people are anymore. They just started making up names. I'm sorry. This may have been one of the gay rocks from the comics or something.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that adapting it from Fallout specifically lends it to, because at least from my knowledge, every Fallout game is a very kind of isolated, centralized story within itself, and I think that works well when you're adapting a show, because you have the overarching stuff, you have to major events you have to remember, but then you can make your own isolated narrative. Whereas Star Wars, you have so many big major players that you have to keep track of all of them, of where they would go into and how they fit in.
Yeah, it's a similar trap kind of that I would say Marvel fell into. It's there's so much, backstory for every character that's at this point you have to watch and pay attention to every, the shows that they're doing on Disney, everything. And it becomes less enjoyable because of that. But when you can create something where each installment can stand on its own merit, yeah, it's the way to do it. It works a lot better. And,
Mm-hmm. And I also think that there are a lot of characters who cross between Fallout. There's a lot of events and a lot of things that clearly happen between the games, and they're very well referenced. And it's annoying that when you look at another piece of media like chat's mentioned Marvel and Pop's mentioned Marvel, how it feels like they're obligated to do that. You don't need to tell these stories that touch on all the aspects of the setting. You're more than welcome to put it in a small corner somewhere. Fallout has these large reaching plots, especially this show, and it's got smaller plots too that touch on things, and it's nice for a change to not have to be like, oh, who is this random person that showed up? Yeah, Scrungo Bungo was better than the old lore. I remember him, guys. We stand Scrungo Bungo here.
Yeah, shout out to Scrungo Bungo, best character.
NA.
So at this point, gonna give a full warning. Chat, we're going to move into spoiler territory. If anybody shows up to the show late, please politely inform them we're in spoiler talk now. I do
I'm gonna go
recommend
grab a beer right before we get into this.
Sure. I do recommend, again, you go see the show. I definitely think it's worth watching. And a lot of the problems that I have with the show are more from a writing perspective, not so much from a, oh no, they ruined the lore perspective. And a lot of the issues could probably easily be fixed in the next season if they explain things a little bit better or you get some confirmations, some setups. Yeah, Scrungo Bungo was very base and it deserves justice. You guys are right. You know what? We'll do an art competition one of these days. Who can draw the best Scrungo Bungo? And they'll get a special role in the server. And we'll just randomly post on the YouTube channel for those who don't watch the live streams. Coming up next, the history of Scrungo Bungo.
And oh man, no one will know that it's not Star Wars.
At this point, yeah.
There you go. That'll be... Chat, come up with some Scrungo Bungo lore, and we'll collect it all later. And I'll make a history of for the April Fool's video, and it'll be the history of Scrungo Bungo in fantasy.
And his influence.
Yeah, how influential Scrungo Bungo is. How Scrungo Bungo taught Tolkien how to read and write.
So true. So true.
We are Scrungo Bungo, exactly, Blowfish. So while we develop Scrungo Bungo in the foreground, let's talk about some Fallout. So the show opens up in the old world before the nukes fell. I think this is a fascinating choice.
Setup, because again, as somebody who's never played the games, if you're approaching it, kind of carte blanche or whatever it's called, a blank slate, you do need something like that just to...
Typically when, I don't know if they're given specific names, but the family asks...
I don't...
Well...
Yeah,
I don't know what that was.
On my screen, I'm seeing a perpetual. Oh yeah, and kids chopping out. Oh no.
Good. Good thing I had Bright House out here for 4 hours and they rewired everything.